Welcome to my channel where we look at math problems that students often have issues with. Together, we're going to find that math can be easy. Today, we're going to look at a summary of how factoring works. If you've seen my previous videos, you already have a good idea how to factor. You're not going to learn a lot of new things here, although there's a little bit. What we're going to instead learn is an ability to find what should we do given a problem. Okay, so to start with, I see it as we have 4 different ways that we can factor. The first one I'm going to call common factoring. There's 2 N's in that. Common factoring is when you say, hey, there are 2 common factors, we can factor those out of these 2 terms. And I'll give an example of that in a little bit. The second one is what I call the double bubble. That's where you just go whoop, 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 put your x's in there and do your thing. That's the most common type of factoring. The third one is the AC method. That's where we take A and multiply by C and we do our thing there. The fourth one is grouping. If you're going to do a factoring problem, you're probably going to do one of these. And I listed them in this order on purpose, because every time you're confronted with a factoring problem, you should immediately think, can I do common factoring? I can't tell you how many times people will struggle working on the AC method, only to realize, hey, if I had done the common factoring to begin with, it would have been way easier. Okay, so let's look at an example. Say I have 2x cubed plus 8x squared plus 6x. And I want to factor that. Well, the first thought is, everything we've discussed, if you've watched my videos and don't know any other factoring, how do you factor an x cubed? We've only ever talked about an x squared. Well, turns out, if you follow the advice of common factoring first, it doesn't matter, because there's an x in everything. And there's also a 2 in everything. So before I even start, I'm going to immediately pull out a 2x. And I'm left with, we have an x squared plus 4x plus 3. So that is a lot easier to factor this than that. All we have to do now is just ignore this 2x. It's there, but we don't have to worry about it. Instead, all we have to think of is how would we factor that portion. So now we look at this and say, okay, we did the common factoring. There's nothing left to pull out of there. So can we do the double bubble? Well, how do you know if you can do the double bubble? Well, first off, it has to be quadratic, and the leading coefficient has to be a 1. Because if this isn't a 1, then we're going to have to use the AC method. Here, it is because we pulled the 2x out. So, we use the double bubble. So I'm just going to leave my 2x here, just like before. And I have my double bubble, x and x. We want 2 numbers, multiply to give you 3, add to give you 4. They're both positive. If you have troubles with that portion, take a look at my basic factoring video. I go over that in a little bit more detail. And we're done. We now know the factors of this are these: 2x, x plus 3, and x plus 1. Notice I did not set it equal to 0, so I'm done. Okay, let's look at another problem that's probably going to be a little bit new for some people. What if I have this? X cubed plus 2x minus 4x, oh, that's squared, minus 8. So x cubed plus 2x squared minus 4x minus 8. Okay, so you look at this again and say, okay, anything common? Well, no, because this only has x's. That's the only thing you can factor out of this one. And this only has 2's, no x's. So there's nothing to factor out in common. And it's a cubic. So since it's a cubic, we can't do the double bubble. We can't do the AC method. The only option we have available to us is grouping. Grouping, if you followed the AC method, really isn't anything new. because for the AC method, we multiplied A times C, we split it up into two parts, and then we factored by grouping. So you actually already know how to factor by grouping if you watch that video. So let's do that here and just see what we find. So if I look at just the first two terms and say, well, what's common? Okay, that would be x squared, because there's two x's in both parts. I'm left with just x plus 2. And then for the second two terms, I'm going to pull out a negative, because anytime this is negative, I'm going to pull that out. I can also pull out a 4 between 4 and 8. I'm left with x plus 2. Since I pulled out the negative, it's a plus. And we got lucky. X plus 2 can be pulled out of both parts. So we're left with x squared and minus 4. From here, we can factor this further, because this is x plus 2, and here, x squared minus 4, that's the difference of two squareds. So that's x plus 2 and x minus 2. So here, we can actually factor a cubic. If you have a cubic and common factoring fails, the only choice you have is grouping. Does that mean you can always factor a cubic with grouping? No. In fact, most cubics you can't factor with grouping. There is a way that you can factor cubics, but I'll have to show you that in another video. So, if you like this video, comment, like, and subscribe. If you have a math concept that you need help with, post it in the comments and I'll see if I can get to it. If you're in need of a math tutor, my email's in the description. Remember, math can be easy.